concentration on the scale of the fatalities is the defining characteristic of the modern British popular view of the First World War. And this is not surprising, as the losses were the largest in British history, dwarfing those of the Second World War, which were not small. And in some ways, this concentration on those who died is an admirable, liberal and humanitarian response. But it is, I think, in sharp contrast to our views of the Second World War, which is more often than not seen as a necessary war, fought against tyranny, against an evil enemy which posed a direct threat to Britain. This is very different from the views on the First World War, where frankly there's rarely any serious consideration of the political objectives that the UK was pursuing in that conflict, in the popular sphere. The gravity of the crisis faced by the British state and empire in 1914 to 18 tends to be either ignored or downplayed, often with 20/20 hindsight being deployed to argue that the Kaiser's Germany wasn't as bad as Hitler's Germany, which is true, but doesn't get you very far. To borrow the pattern of just war theory, the ends for which the war were fought are regarded as not being worth the human misery involved, and the means by which victory was achieved, assuming that people do realise that Britain and its allies were actually victorious, are reviled. Significantly, the bloody attrition of the Somme and Passchendaele are remembered, but the victorious 100 Days of 1918 are generally not. Well, I went to see the Tower Poppies on their very last day, on the 11th of November 2014, and it was indeed an impressive artwork. But as a historian of the First World War, what struck me was the lack of context. The installation could have been commemorating a natural disaster. I looked and failed to find anything around the display which explained why such large numbers of men died. Of course, because the poppy as a symbol is embedded deep in the British national psyche, everybody knew what the poppies meant. It was all about the lives that were lost. Research by Jenny Kidd and Joanne Sainer has shown that such tropes as men as having died for freedom were expressed by a number of visitors to the poppies, but in a rather vague way. Conversely, a volunteer who helped prepare the installation recorded that the futility of the war is rammed home with every poppy hammered into the ground. What good did their deaths do was asked again and again as we planted. What have we learned from it was another. Jonathan Jones, the art critic of The Guardian, denounced the Tower Poppies as a prettified and toothless war memorial. What a lie. The First World War was not noble. War is not noble. A meaningful mass memorial to this horror would not be dignified or pretty. The moat of the tower should be filled with barbed wire and bones. That would mean something. Now, Jones', I'll say very controversial view, is a version of the widespread notion that the First World War was futile. But both this view and actually the vague died for freedom view show very little understanding of why 888,246 died. Well, this lengthy preamble is by way of arguing that the answer to the exam question I've been set to remind ourselves it is Britain of the First World War, was it all worth it, is by no means straightforward. For a start, we need to differentiate between views held in 2019 from those held while the war was going on. We need to decide what it means to be worth it, and even exactly what we understand the First World War to mean.